Hey YouTube, and welcome back to the Guitar Slinger Hockey channel. So during this video today, I'm going to do a bit of a review and mostly a fit comparison between the Bauer Hyperlite skates and the CCM FT4 Pro Jetspeeds. And I figured I'd try doing something a little bit different since not everybody has the same foot shape and size and all that good stuff. I figured I would share the images from my volumetal that I had done when I was scanned for Bauer skates. I do consider this to be an accurate representation of my feet, and it did translate to the correct sizing in my case. And so I figure since I'm doing a lot of talking about the fit differences, hopefully by sharing some of my actual foot images, it'll have a point of reference for you when you're thinking about how you might fit in these skates. And it's true in my case that I need to wear a wide boot in all cases, but you can still apply it relatively based on whatever your foot says. So just kind of getting into it here. This is just the initial image that you have when you get your volumetal done. I don't think there's probably anything super obvious until we start getting into the details, so I'm just going to roll into the next clip of the top-down view. So when we look at the top-down, what I will point out is that I have feet that, I don't know, I would consider them to kind of spread out from the heel to the forefoot on both feet. I think that you'll notice that my ankle diameter is fairly small to regular in diameter in comparison to my feet. You can also see that my ankle bone, especially on my right foot, and the big toe joint on my right foot kind of protrude out more so than my left, but in a lot of cases, those kind of pointy parts can cause me irritation on Bauer skates, and so the forefoot, or I should say the big toe joint on my right foot, causes issues with Bauer skates, and the ankle bone causes issues with CCM skates. So I get the worst of all worlds. So, but just something to note. And then my middle toe on my right foot is a little bit longer than my big toe, which can cause length issues on certain skating types. Okay, so let's go to the heels. Okay, as you can see here, I have fairly wide heels, and especially on the left foot. In addition, my heels or my feet tend to pronate inwards a little bit, which can cause some pain on the outsides of my ankle from a standpoint of strain if the skates aren't stable enough and there isn't a good enough foot wrap. The other thing is that my tendons or my Achilles tendons are regular to larger in thickness, so that can play a part in how well your heels lock into the boot, which will kind of play into differences between the Hyperlite and the Jetspeed skates. So now let's get into some of the more detailed numbers that I think people will be able to relate to a little bit better. Okay, so now that you've seen a 3D image of my feet, taking a look at the actual numbers, this is what we get from a quote-unquote foot size. So the left foot's a little bit bigger than a 7.5, and the right foot is a little bit bigger than an 8. I find that to be accurate when I try on skates. I can fit into a 7.5 custom Bauer skate, and although I prefer the 7 3/4, and I fit into an 8 on the right foot. So for me, buying a retail skate, I'm going to do 8 every single time. Foot width on the left foot shows me that I'm wider than a D. My right foot is a lot wider than an E. I disagree with this one a little bit because my left foot tends to feel wider than my right foot. And so I'm not as confident on this measurement as with the rest of the measurements. This one to me feels like it's swapped, like the left foot feels like it always needs more width than the right. But that's just what the result came up with, and I can kind of understand it because I used to wear a super tax and a D width, but skates change throughout the years. There's less and less volume as manufacturers make them that way. Okay, so let's move on. Okay, so here's where we get into the problems that I have getting into skates. Instep height. As you can see, relative to the population that Bauer has scanned, I've got a pretty high instep on my left and right feet, and that makes what that translates to is lace bite, not enough foot wrap, and sometimes we'll get a little bit of issue for skates that have long toe caps. The top of the toe cap can dig into the top of my foot, causing pain, and for me to want to sell the skates. So that's where my fit issues start to happen, is with this high instep. This next set of measurements also can cause issues. So again, high arches, definitely need to use something that has a high arch support, whether it be super feet or custom insoles, something like that to accommodate the high arch. But the higher your arch is, again, you're going to be kind of popping out the top of the boot like a loaf of bread if the skate doesn't have enough volume for you. And then the next one, the forefoot height. This is definitely a very accurate measurement in my case. I don't have any problems with my right foot at all. However, the height of my forefoot, which is like just where your toes attach to your foot, that area is the reason why one would choose an oversized toe cap if you were in the custom market. Like for me, I wear a size 8 skate, but when I'm going custom, I go with the oversized, which is essentially a size 9 toe cap. And that's needed to alleviate the top of the foot there, because it'll be jamming into the top of my foot, causing circulation problems, pain, tingling, and all kinds of nerve damage that you don't want. And these measurements are really, it's just our ankle wrap here, I'll point out. So my ankle here, it's showing that I have a normal ankle on my right foot and maybe a little bit of a thicker ankle on my left foot. This particular measurement plays into whether or not one might prefer a vapor skate over a Jetspeed or vice versa. I'll talk about that when I actually get into the two skates. But this was a interesting one that didn't even occur to me, but this is kind of plays into how stable your skates are from a lateral standpoint. Okay, now for two of my favorite subjects, heel width and heel depth. These are my issues. As you can see here, I don't know what's going on with these heels. They're wide compared to everybody. And then, of course, the heel depth. The heel depth is the issue that causes me problems with the inside pointy parts of my ankle bones. Because I have such a high heel depth, that means that my ankle bones will ride on the inside of the eyelets, unless I wear a gel bunga pad, something like that on my ankle bones in most retail skates. So anybody who says that, just tough it out in retail skates, skates aren't meant to be comfortable, they're, you can push through stuff. So this heel depth problem that I have results in literally bloody bloody ankle bones. And so that's not something to fight through, especially when you're paying $1,000 on skates or more on custom ones. And this is even a challenging one for custom skates. This is why, if you've watched my video on Der Frankenboot, the custom ultrasonics, that's why they had to put me in a size 9 fit 3 with a size 10 toe cap on it, even though I wear a size 8 skate, because manufacturers don't seem to be able to accommodate anybody who has the heel depth, like I do. And so, for reference, this heel depth is probably in alignment with a double E Nexus skate for when that was around. So there really isn't a good alternative to the Nexus skate anymore, since the Fit 3 is more designed for a D width. So that's just something to consider, and this has been one of the banes of my existence, and this heel depth issue is why I got into the custom skate game a number of years ago, trying to figure that one out. And it took a lot of manufacturers a lot of times to try to get it right, and most of them still didn't. So that measurement right there is a big reason why I always point people towards going with custom CCMs. And even though I'm not a big fan of True can handle this for you. So if you wanted to go that direction, you could. Okay, so with that said, now I'm going to get into the review and comparison and fit comparison. Now that you have some background and context and what kind of fitting issues and challenges that I'm going through and that I've gone through in order to get skates. So, what I'll do is I will speak a little bit of the pros and cons of each of the skates. Don't have a lot of hours on the CCMs yet, so grain of salt it, but I have worn enough CCMs to know kind of what I'm in for. I only have 2 hours on the CCM skates, but I do know what's likely going to happen based on the many other pairs of CCM skates I've had. So, without further ado, I wasn't really considering the jet speeds because those have always been a very low volume, narrow fitting skate. And if you've been somebody that's been watching any of my videos, you know that narrow, low volume is not my jam. And so if you are somebody that fits those type of skates, I do think there'll still be some value in this video because you can obviously get those narrow, low volume skates in either of these two skates. So had an opportunity to pick up the Jetspeeds recently, and I had heard rumors that they were a very voluminous skate if you go with the wide variant. And so I was curious to see how that compared to my Hyperlites in the Fit 3. The Hyperlites were a very big surprise to me as I never fit the 2X Pros very well. These definitely have more room in them, and I would say in the Forefoot than the 2X Pros did. And so I was like, oh, okay, I was very blown away by that. And I've actually been using the Hyperlites since August of 2021. And so I'm very familiar with their pros and cons and what I like, what I don't. And I've about to start the journey here with the CCMs. Full disclosure, I only have 2 hours logged of ice time with the CCMs. Most of that is because I'm waiting for my steel to come back profiled. I ordered another set of that DLC Blade Tech that's currently on the Bauer skates. And the reason I do that is because I have become a bit of a Blade Tech fanboy for two reasons. So the first one and the most important one to me is that the step steel, I don't know if you can see it here. This is step steel that has been sharpened once but not profiled in comparison to the Blade Tech, which has been profiled and sharpened a bunch of times. But step steel is definitely taller than the Blade Tech is, brand new. So I actually do not like the step steel's height. I've noticed that step steel, although it's like really high quality, I prefer to order used step steel when I have the chance because I don't like how high it is off the ice. It is true you can cut higher, cut tighter, but it gets a little bit wobbly the higher it gets. And I don't seem to be the only one that feels that way. I think people tend to like the step steel when it gets worn in a bit. But Blade Tech comes at that perfect height right out of the box. It's like, I think it's a little taller than the LS4 steel. I don't know. It's just the right height for me, and that's the one of the main reasons I go for it. The other thing is the little flexible hole thingy that's in the steel. I can actually feel a little bit of a performance benefit. It's not like enough to buy the steel, and I've mentioned this in another video about it, but you can definitely tell when you're coming out of tight turns and crossing out of a turn. You can feel it kind of spring you out of it a little bit. You don't notice anything on a straightaway speed, but you do notice it that way. And there might be some benefit to reducing lower body injuries because of the spring, but I don't know. I can't tell, so I'm not gonna weigh in on that one. But I do prefer the Blade Tech, and the steel is a little bit higher quality than step steel just because of the hardness rating. I get more life out of a sharpening on the Blade Tech than I do the step steel. Not maybe significant, but it's enough that if you're in the market for the steel and you can choose the Blade Tech or the step steel, probably the determining factor for me would be whether or not you like that steel to be as tall as step or you want it to be a little bit closer to the ice like the Blade Tech. which, you know, I prefer that. Just my own preference. So, okay, so let's talk about the fits of these skates. So this was a kind of a cool experiment for me. So heard enough of the rumors that, you know, CCM is, you know, and just for reference, we got an 8 fit 3 and an 8 wide, or ample as it's called. Wide ample. Ooh. I have an ample foot apparently. So basically, the Bauer skate is slightly longer than the CCM is. I feel like I could, if I was going custom, I could probably get down to a 7 3/4 in the Bauer. For custom for CCM, I wouldn't touch the size 8. Any shorter than that, I would be jamming my toes in there. So there's like a little bit of a length difference in the boots, which was kind of interesting. I found it to be probably the perfect size for me, but just know that there is a slight length difference. I will tell you that I had a unexpected opportunity to try on the CCM Ripcore 100K Pros in a size 8 wide right next to these CCMs just by accident. And the Jetspeed is a more voluminous skate than the Ripcore. I couldn't believe it. I thought it would be the other way around. And the most notable thing about that would be specifically the toe cap, the instep height is taller on this boot than was on the Ripcore. And I don't know, I can't remember, but this one is slightly asymmetrical in design with the toe cap. It's not as extreme as the asymmetric toe cap of the Bauer skates, but that gives a better feel to me than the Ripcores, which definitely surprised me because I'm a Ripcore fan. But I don't think I would have been happy in those skates if I had gotten them. So that's something to consider. The forefoot on a wide skate for CCM, I will say that this is not as wide of a boot in the forefoot as the Bauer is. So I think that people who have said that the Bauer Fit 3 is a little bit wider in the forefoot, I would agree with that from a standpoint of the Hyperlite is a little wider than the Jetspeed, but the Jetspeed is significantly wider than the forefoot of a Fit 3 Ultrasonic, in my opinion. So maybe something to consider. The heel is an interesting fit on the CCM. The fit is more snug in the CCM than the Vapor, but the fit of the CCM heel is better. So I think it heat molds better, and it can take the contours of your heels a bit better. And you know, I have wider heels, and so that's kind of important. So even though it was kind of snug in the CCM skates, the way it heat molds, it accommodated the heel, and there was actually very much a suction cup sound when your heel locks into the CCM boot, which is obviously what you want, where I don't get that with the Vapor, even though you know, it's probably more accommodating for my heel width than the CCM is. So that's something to consider. The other thing is, if you are somebody that has a kind of a wobble to their skates, I do notice a little bit of that lateral instability with the Vapor skates. That is not as much of a thing with the Jetspeeds, and the reason for that, I believe, are twofold. So I think that having real eyelets as opposed to the injected ones is a pro for getting a better foot wrap, but these are also better for people who have a more narrow or regular width ankle, like I do. These do a better job of wrapping the higher ankle than the Vapors do. So I've noticed that this is less. I don't have as many issues with the lateral stability as I would on the Vapors. And the difference where I'm noticing that is when when I'm doing some tight turning and cutting, I tend to be a little bit more prone to catching an edge with the Vapors than I do the CCMs. And if, again, I've logged a lot of hours with the Bowers, but not as 2 hours with these particular CCMs. So I will say that from an initial feel standpoint, that is something I've noticed. There's a little bit of wrap on the CCMs, and it kind of fills out the upper ankle better than the Vapors do. And I can say, yeah, it's comfortable and more open all the way down. But I just think that the donut foam in the CCM's a little bit fuller. So the other thing is too, like if you have like a fairly narrow Achilles tendon, I actually have a fairly quote unquote regular, whatever that means. So that's pretty good for the CCM fit. Then with regard to stiffness, there's no competition in stiffness. I think the Vapors are very flexible at the upper boot in comparison to the Jetspeeds. One of the things that I think that CCM does and I guess depending on who you are, a good or a bad job. I think CCM boots are always too stiff, and the Jetspeed is no exception. It's going to take me a lot longer to break in the Jetspeed skates than it is the Vapors. But, who knows? That might equate to being the skate. Maybe I'll get more life out of it than the Bauer. I don't know. But the stiffness is crazy. I usually have to, whenever I get a new pair of CCM one-piece boots, I have to take a heat gun to this area right here and kind of bend it outwards and straight, because when you start cutting, this has a tendency to dig into your high ankle and cause some abrasions, which I've noticed that. So you can actually wrap the Bauer completely tight around your upper ankle and it won't cause any issues, at least in my case, whereas you do not want to be doing that with any of the CCM offerings. It will cause you some problems. Regarding the tongues, the tongues obviously are replaceable, and that's just whatever. It doesn't bother me at all. I actually think I might like the tongue better on the Bauers than the CCMs. This is going to be a total preference thing. I think that Bauer did a really good job with their tongues this year. CCM, I would say that if you're somebody who likes to do the flop, this kind of thing, and wear your shin pads under the tongue, you'd probably prefer the CCMs. There seems like there's more protection on the Bauer tongues than on the CCM tongues. And you could obviously switch those tongues out on the CCM for something else, but I don't think I would want a thicker tongue in order to get that additional protection. I don't know. But it works fine. It's simple enough, and it's not uncomfortable. It's your basic comfortable felt tongue. And the other thing I'll note about it is that you have a break in the protection right there. So there's actually nothing protecting the top of the foot, which is a pro and a con to me. For protection, it's obviously a weak point, but from a comfort standpoint, it's a big plus, because there's nothing, you don't have to worry about, any kind of weird pinch point like the old AS3 Pro Super Tax had. And kind of speaking to that, about the sizing on CCM, I think that you'll have a hard time finding any really good data points on how the new CCM sizing fits. For example, you're going to see a tapered, regular, and wide. And the question is, are we just making those skates progressively wider, or are they also increasing the volume? And I am happy to say that as they increase the width, they're also increasing the volume. And so it is truly not a situation where they just change the name and they're giving you the same old sizes. What I will repeat to you from what I've heard is that a tapered fit would be like a D-width Jetspeed. A regular, air quote, regular fit would be like the volume and width of a D-fitting SuperTax AS3 Pro. And then the wide fitting one would be a double E fitting AS3 Pro SuperTax. I don't agree with that last one, and the reason is this. So, the wide variant of these skates, I happen to have owned a size 8 double E AS3 Pro Super Tack skate, and this Jetspeed has significantly more volume in the forefoot, the heel depth, the heel width than that skate did. To give you an example, I had to wear gel ankle bone pads in the AS3 Pro, whereas I do not have to do that in these. In fact, I actually have to wear an ankle bone pad in those skates because there's not enough heel depth. If I don't wear them, I have issues with that part of the skate. My ankle bone doesn't sit on padding. It seems to on those, so that's a cool change. The other thing is that the toe cap on the Jetspeed in the wide variant, I have room for my forefoot width and my instep height, whereas on the CCM AS3 Pros, my left foot had a lot of pinky toe pinching, and the top of the toe cap here would dig into the top of my foot, and that's actually the reason why I got rid of them. They were a nice skate. The toe cap was a crappy design in my opinion, and they were just not wide enough for what I wanted. So if you want to have a I don't know, if you're somebody who wants a wide skate, the FT4 Pro in a wide variant is wider than a double E Super Tack. I can say that for sure now. Let me also give you a couple of perspectives from a top down on the toe cap. You can see that it's a little bit more straight on this side, so it doesn't curve in too much. That was something that I felt like some of the other earlier skates had an issue with. Like if it was too much of an aggressive cut in here, it might jam your big toe. Same on this side with the pinky toe. Not an issue here. Not an issue on the Vapors either, though. So let me give you a little top down on that one. So it's pretty straight on the right side of the toe cap and pretty gradual and enough room in there for your pinky toe. From a comfort of the toe cap standpoint, there's nothing that's going to beat the CCM. I think pretty much all CCM skates have fantastic comfort from a standpoint of what's happening in the pinky toe. And just for reference, on the CCMs, and I've noticed this in the Ribcore 100K Pros too, there is some sort of foam lining that is on the side here and the side here. And you can feel it, and at first you're like, oh, is this going to be kind of irritating? But no, your foot just kind of squeezes right in there, and it's really nice, holds your foot stable, but in a cushioned manner, whereas you have none of that in the Vapor. And I will say that I have developed some issues on my big toe joints on the side of them because it's kind of right. I'm just going to turn the boot around here. So this area, the big toe joint, kind of sits right in where the seam is with the toe cap. And there can be some discomfort at times if we're really going to nitpick, but it's not that big of a deal. It's just a matter of that's just much more comfortable. From a weight standpoint, who cares? Move on. They're both light. I was going to say something interesting about the Jetspeeds in the wide variant. There is a similar feel to these skates as the true customs that I used to have. And just from the standpoint of how the boot is designed, from a kind of wider forefoot, I don't know why. It could be just the size that I'm in, but there was a very similar feel when I got on the ice with how they felt. So if you're someone who likes true, you might give these a shot and see what you think. They're definitely not a true boot. I think these are a better performing skate than those. Of course, depending on custom and whatever, but I had that recollection when I was skating in these for the first time. I was like, oh man, these have like a little bit of a true vibe without that aggressive forward pitch. So just an interesting side note. So I guess I'm not really in a position to say which one I like better at this point, but I think that CCM is going to do a better job in the comfort range. I think that it's going to heat mold better. I will say that from an on-ice performance, It's a one-piece boot on the CCM. I just don't think you can beat that. It's just more responsive. You can feel the ice better than with the Bauer skates. You know, I could see the potential for the CCMs to be a faster boot. Um, I think the Vapors are pretty much a pretty comfortable boot right out of the box. I think I broke in. When all is said and done, I will say that the Vapor probably will have broken in faster than the CCM did, just because of the stiffness. But I think that probably the CCM will end up being a faster boot, and the Vapor will be a little bit more of an agile boot. But that's also kind of its weakness for me. I'm more of a power skater than I am an agility skater, and so I do notice that I lose some lateral stability with the Vapors over what I've noticed on the Jetspeed so far. Jetspeeds are going to be way too stiff, so that's something to take into consideration. You might have, I think you'll have a fair amount of foot pain for a while until you break them in. I'm going to be no different with this stuff. You know, and you'll just have to dial in. You know, do a 1, 2, 3 bakes with them and see how it goes. But you know, they're a nice skate. They're well made. I think everything about them is a green light to recommend them. Did a good job with the toe caps. Regarding one last thing I'm going to add is just more of a speculation type of thing. From what I heard about the new AS5 Pro Super Tax that are coming out, supposedly, if you're an 8 wide like I am in the Jetspeeds, the 8 wide in the Super Tax will have more volume than these do. But currently, the Jetspeeds are more voluminous than the Ribcors, in my opinion. So a little bit of a surprising fact. But so if you're considering wanting something that's more voluminous, then try going with the Super Tax when those come out and give those a run. But these two boots here, the Vapor and the CCM, they still hold true for somebody who's got a wider forefoot, maybe a narrower heel, or just have that general shape. And so I think that they would both be a good shot for you. And of course, you can reference my Bauer Volumentals that I showed earlier in the video to kind of see if you might be a similar type of fit. But I can tell you both of these are going to work for me, and I'll be excited to try these in comparison to the Super Tax AS5 Pros when they come out too. But anyways, that's what I wanted to share for now. Hopefully that's some good insight. I think that you probably, this is getting complicated enough now that if you can go and try these skates on in the store to get a feel for them, do that. I wouldn't probably guarantee, if you've been in an older fitting system like just a D or a double E, that kind of stuff, that something's going to fit you nowadays. Even the length seems to be a little bit different. So please give them a shot in the store if you can. I know with all the supply chain stuff, it's a challenge. But anyways, hope you liked the video. Hope it was insightful. And please reach out with any questions or comments if you have them. Peace.